So let us start with neuroanatomy. So the first topic under neuroanatomy is cranial nerves. So this is very important. For university, we have only 3 or 4 questions, but it is very important practically, and also we should understand detailedly about cranial nerve lesions and location of nuclei, etc. so that during a clinical practice, it will be easier for us to treat patients. So we will see in what way it is going to help us. Let me start with general introduction. So we all know we have 12 pairs of cranial nerves. So starting with your olfactory nerve, first nerve is your olfactory nerve, next optic, next oculomotor, next cochlear, then trigeminal, which has 3 divisions. That's why it is given here 5-1, 5-2, and 5-3. Then we have our abducens nerve, then facial nerve, then vestibulocochlear nerve, then glossopharyngeal nerve, vagus nerve, spinal axillary nerve, and hypoglossal nerve. So these are the 12 pairs of cranial nerves that we have in our body. Okay. And classification of cranial nerves. So how you can classify the cranial nerves? So based on its function. So certain cranial nerves, it is going to contain only sensory part, which means it is going to involve only carrying the sensations. And certain is meant for only motor function. Certain nerves, they have both motor and sensory role. So the nerves which have only sensory part, sensory cranial nerves, motor cranial nerves, and mixed nerves. So just remember 1, 2, 8. Okay, so olfactory nerve, optic nerve, and vestibulocochlear nerve. This should be 8. Sorry, writing error. So olfactory nerve, optic nerve, vestibulocochlear nerve. This is your 8th nerve. So 1, 2, 8 is sensory nerve. Okay, and if you take your motor cranial nerves, 3, 4, 6, 11, and 12. Okay, so these are your motor cranial nerves. And mixed nerve 5, 7, 9, 10. So glossopharyngeal would have already seen in your tongue, if you remember, and facial nerve also we have seen one part, if you remember, chorda tympani, and trigeminal and vagus nerve. So 1 to 8 sensory, 5, 7, 9, 10 is going to be mixed nerve. So you need not remember this, just remember these two, 1 to 8 and 5, 7, 9, 10. Okay, so these are the classification of cranial nerves based on the type of nerve fibers they carry. Now, very important side heading that you must learn is about functional components. So before going on to functional components, you should know what is the meaning of afferent fiber A and efferent fibers. So if you remember your glomerulus, you would have seen an afferent arteriole and you would have seen an efferent arteriole. See, always remember afferent means towards, efferent means away. So if you take afferent arteriole, from your renal artery, it comes towards your glomerulus. Efferent arteriole goes away from the glomerulus. So always remember, any fiber that goes towards a particular center is called as an afferent fiber. Any set of nerve fibers that goes away from the center is called as efferent nerve fibers. So I mean to say, by center na enna na, center is nothing but your CNS. So the nerve fibers which arise from different parts of the body and it goes to the CNS is called as afferent fibers. And the set of nerve fibers which arise from CNS and goes to different parts of body is called as efferent fibers. That's why if you take your sensory part here, it has mentioned as afferent fibers. So if you remember your reflex pathway that you have studied in your school days, so any touch pain sensation, it is going to be carried by the afferent fibers. Okay, so you have a set of fibers called afferent fibers, that is towards. You have set of fibers called efferent fibers, that is going to be away from the CNS. Now, what is a functional component? So again, the term is self-explanatory. So functionally, what are the fibers that constitute a component in a particular nerve? Okay, so if you take facial nerve, you will be able to list out some functions. But it is not the entire facial nerve that involves in a particular function. Okay, so if you take, there is going to be some set of fibers which are meant for a particular function. Those are called as functional components. Functionally, what are the set of nerve fibers present for a cranial nerve altogether that gives up a function? If you take your functional components can be classified broadly into somatic group of functional component, visceral group of functional component. So if you take somatic groups, always remember somatic means soma means body, okay, and visceral means organ. So somatic, you remember, you will have only one afferent fiber and one efferent fiber, that is general somatic afferent, general somatic efferent fibers. Okay, again I'll repeat, GSE stands for general somatic afferent and this stands for general somatic efferents. So efferent means, I told you, purely motor. So generally what is the muscle that is going to supply? All your voluntary muscles or your striated muscles. So your general somatic efferent fibers are meant for supplying all the striated muscles in the body. Okay, so general, okay, somatic. So body, what is the muscle that is most commonly found on your skeletal system? It's striated muscles. So the general somatic efferent fibers, they supply all the striated muscle. Now, general somatic afferent. Afferent means, I told, sensory. So it is going to carry all the basic sensations like your pain, touch, temperature and all from different parts of the body to the CNS. So somatically, we have two set of functional components. General somatic afferents, that is going to carry all your sensation like your touch, pain, temperature, etc. And if you take general somatic efferents, it is going to supply all these striated muscles. Now coming on to visceral. So visceral, if you take, we will have four functional components to be discussed. General visceral afferent, some special visceral afferent, general visceral efferent, special visceral efferent. Okay, so general in almost viscera means organ. So generally in all viscera, what is the afferent fiber present? What is its function? In general, in all viscera, what is the efferent fiber present? Okay, so general visceral afferent, you can easily, so in all viscera, what is the most commonest sensation that can be carried? Any distension or pain that arises from an organ. So if you take, pain can arise due to ischemia also to that organ, right? So general visceral afferents are meant to carry any visceral distension or ischemic pain. Again, I'll repeat, afferent means sensation. So in viscera, what is the most general sensation that is present? You will have a distension of an organ, or you can have an ischemic pain or an ischemic injury that may reflect as pain. Okay, so these sensations are carried by general visceral afferents. Okay, now special visceral afferents. So specially, what is this going to do? So it is only present in your tongue. So it carries your sensation from your tongue. So special visceral afferent is only found in your tongue, that helps in taste sensation. So specially, what is the sensation present in a viscera? This taste sensation. Okay, that is going to be carried by SVA. Okay, now if you take general visceral efferents. Okay, so generally, what are the efferent fibers? So all your fibers to your glands, okay, and your general viscera, smooth muscles. Okay, all these are general visceral efferents. Special visceral efferents is muscles derived from the pharyngeal arch. So the set of efferent fibers that supply your muscles derived from pharyngeal arch is your special visceral efferents. Your set of efferent fibers that supply the generalized structures like your glands, like your smooth muscles of viscera, is your general visceral efferents. General visceral afferent means your pain, temperature, etc. Special visceral afferent we saw in your tongue taste sensation. So what you must understand is, somatica we have two. Afferent means sensation, efferent means muscle. So somatic, so in body, what muscle we have? Striated muscle. So we have general somatic efferent which carries or which supplies your striated muscle. Somatic afferent. So what generally in our body we have? You should write. So you should correlate like that and write. Okay, so it is going to be easier. Okay, so this is what you must know. Now we will move on to the most important essay question, that is on facial nerve. So now, if a cranial nerve is asked as an essay, most probably facial nerve is a possible question. How you are supposed to present? What is the protocol? So if you take the protocol, you should give an introduction. As I always say, any question you should give a small introduction. Here you should talk about functional components. So we were discussing so far, right? What are the functional components and all. So you should mention what are the functional components that is present in this particular cranial nerve. Then its course and relation, branches, and then clinicals. Now in my session, I'll be talking about introduction, functional component, course. Branches I will not be touching on because you can study from your textbook. It is very simple. And I'll be focusing on clinicals. As I said, it is very important. So introduction, if you are going to give, so introduction, what you will write, which nerve it is, which I mean, what cranial nerve, whether it is first or second or so, whether it is a motor or a sensory or a mixed nerve. These are the 2 points that you will include on introduction. So for facial nerve, it is a 7th cranial nerve and it is a mixed nerve. Now, functional components. So I hope you all remember. So the functional components that we have 4 functional components. Always remember, here we do not have any somatic. Okay, so mostly we will not have any somatic efferent here. So if you take first is GSA, so general somatic afferent. Okay, so what is the role of general somatic afferent? It carries all your sensations like your pain, touch, temperature, etc. So general somatic afferent. SVA stands for special visceral afferent. So you all know taste sensation we have seen already. General visceral efferent. So all your general things like it supplies your glands, your smooth muscles of your viscera, everything. And you have SVE, special visceral efferents, muscles derived from the pharyngeal arch. Okay, so in functional components of any cranial nerve, you will include what are the functional components present and what is the nucleus that it is related to. Okay, so you all know every nerve is going to have a set of nuclei from which it is going to arise. You all will learn in this neurophysiology what is a nuclei, what is a lesion, etc. Just understand every nerve is going to arise from a nuclei. So nuclei is nothing but there's going to be collection of cell bodies. Okay, that is nothing but your nuclei. Okay, so every functional component is going to arise from some nuclei. So what you will write is what is the functional component, from which nucleus it is arising, and what is the role of it. So if you take general somatic afferent, so we have already seen general sensation like your pain, touch, temperature, all will be done. So it is going to arise from a spinal nucleus. So the general somatic afferent fibers concerned with your facial nerve arises from a nucleus called spinal nucleus. Next, SVA, special visceral afferent. So we have seen taste sensation. You would have seen this in your olfactory, taste pathway. Okay, nucleus tractus solitarius. You would have seen in physiology, NTS. Okay, so SVA arises from your NTS. Next, GVE, general visceral efferents, that arises from 2 nucleus, your lacrimentary nucleus and then superior salivatory nucleus. So your nucleus is going to explain you which structure it is going to supply. So lacrimentary nucleus. So it is evident that it is going to give some of its fibers to lacrimal gland. And superior salivatory nucleus. So it is going to supply salivary gland. So it supplies your lacrimal and the salivary glands. Next is your SVE. Okay, so from motor nucleus. So special visceral efferent. So motor, right? So it is going to arise from the motor nucleus of the facial nerve. That is going to be in the pons. That supplies your facial muscles. So these are your functional components. These are the respective nuclei from which they either terminate or arise. Efferent, they arise from these nuclei. Afferent, they terminate on this nuclei. And these are the functions. Now moving on to course. See, course in your Vishram Singh, you would have given in paragraph, you would have given in so many lines. But we will try to make it very simple. Course, if you are going to put it in form of a flow chart, it is going to be very easier. That's how even my HOD taught me, and that's what I'm also going to teach you. Okay, if you're going to write this, it's more than enough in your university exam. So, course. So always you remember when you study a nerve course, you should first have an idea what are the landmarks that you are going to remember. Okay, so these are the landmarks that the nerve is going to cross across. So first is your pontomedullary junction. Second is your cerebellopontine angle. Third is your internal acoustic meatus. Next is your middle ear. Next is stylomastoid foramen. Next, finally, your parotid gland. So if you take here, this will be your cerebellopontine angle, internal acoustic meatus, and then stylomastoid foramen. So here we have been given three important landmarks. Three very, very, very important. Okay. So now, how I am going to teach you courses, I have put only pictures so that you will get an orientation. Okay, for that I have put pictures, and once I am done with the course, for a revision I have put a flow chart. So first we will study. So the first thing we have seen is a pontomedullary junction. So how will you start writing? So the first thing, so I told you in form of a flow chart you will write, right? So the first thing is the nerve is going to arise from the pontomedullary junction, which means in your brainstem, in between your pons and medulla, it is going to arise. Okay, so this is your cerebellum. Okay, so what is going to happen? The first point you will write, nerve is going to originate from the pontomedullary junction. Next, what happens is it moves laterally and forward. So if you take here, here you can see you will be having your pontomedullary junction somewhere here. Okay, so in origin, what is going to happen is it is going to arise from the pontomedullary junction as two roots. So we saw facial nerve is a mixed nerve. So it must have a sensory component as well as a motor component. So it is going to arise as two different roots or two separate roots. Medially, you will have your motor nerve or your motor root, and laterally you will have your sensory root. Okay. So just have your textbook aside so that you'll be able to appreciate the root. I just want you to understand the course now. So here you will be having a pontomedullary junction. So it is going to arise as your two roots, your medially placed motor root and laterally placed sensory root. Now after its origin, it is going to move laterally and forwards. It is going to move laterally and forwards. And it is going to rest on cerebellopontine angle. Cerebellopontine angle. So the angle between your pons and the cerebellum is called as your cerebellopontine angle. Okay, so if you take, this is your cerebellum, this is your pontomedullary junction. What is going to happen is, from this pontomedullary junction, it is going to go to a cerebellopontine angles. It is going to move laterally and forwards. So after origin, it moves laterally and forwards towards your cerebellopontine angle. Okay, so if you take here, you will be having your cerebellum. Okay, so what? Just imagine this brain picture here. So here you will be having your pons or something. So it is going to go to your cerebellum. So once it is going to go to cerebellopontine angle along your cerebellum, the next landmark is it is going to enter your internal aquastic meatus. I hope you are able to follow. The first thing we saw, it arises from the pontomedullary junction as two roots, a medially placed motor root and laterally placed sensory root. After that, it is going to move laterally and forwards towards your cerebellopontine angle. And from your cerebellopontine angle, so here you will be having a cerebellum, so it is going to go like this, and it is going to enter the internal aquastic meatus. Okay, so in cerebellopontine angle, you must write one thing. Both the roots are going to lie between the vestibulocochlear nerve and the labyrinth artery. And I'll repeat, it is going to lie between your vestibulocochlear nerve and the labyrinth artery. So how will you write this in flowchart? First, you write pontomedullary junction, the root story. Next, you will write it moves laterally and forwards to reach the cerebellopontine angle, where it lies in between your vestibulocochlear nerve and the labyrinth artery. Okay, so now it is going to enter into your internal aquastic meatus. Once it enters into the internal aquastic meatus, so if you take, this will be your internal aquastic meatus. So once it enters into the internal, this is your internal aquastic meatus. Once it enters into your internal aquastic meatus, it is going to enter into the facial canal in the petrous part of temporal bone. Okay, it is going to enter the facial canal in the petrous part of the temporal bone. Okay, so I hope you can able to correlate. So here it is going to come like this. It is going to enter internal aquastic meatus, and it is going to enter the facial canal by moving on to the petrous part of the temporal bone. Okay. Now what happens? So it has entered into facial canal. So at the bottom of your internal aquastic meatus, so somewhere here, the two roots that were separate is going to fuse together. The two roots that were separate is going to fuse together. Okay, so this is going to be the course in the cranial cavity, and then your in your brain part, and then in your internal acoustic matters. Again, I'll repeat. Just listen. Pontomedullary junction, two roots, then laterally forwards towards the cerebellopontine angle. Then it is going to move upwards into your internal acoustic meatus, where it is going to enter the facial canal at the petrous part of the temporal bone, and at the bottom of your internal acoustic meatus, the two roots are going to join. Okay, the two roots are going to join and form the facial trunk. The two roots are going to fuse and form the facial trunk. Then, so just imagine this picture. So what is going to happen here? You are having a cranial cavity and all that, right? So after it forms the facial trunk, it descends downwards. Okay, and then it is going to be related to your medial wall of your middle ear. So this is your medial wall of middle ear. So it is going to be related to the medial wall of middle ear. So to be more specific, it is more related to your promontory and the vestibule. I just mentioned this alone. It is going to be more related to your promontory and the vestibule. So we have seen this, right? So this is your oblique part of facial canal. Then it goes to your posterior wall, right? So from your medial wall, the facial nerve, it goes to the posterior wall of the middle ear cavity. And from your posterior wall of middle ear cavity, it is going to go to your stylomastoid foramen, and it is going to have an extracranial course. So this you would have seen in parotid gland. So it comes out of your stylomastoid foramen. It enters your posteromedial aspect of your parotid gland. It is going to divide into these particular branches, as you have already seen in the parotid gland. So what you must know here, first pontomedullary junction, cerebellopontine angle, internal acoustic meatus. So at the bottom of the internal acoustic meatus, both the roots are going to fuse to form the facial trunk, enters the facial canal, then it is related to your medial wall of middle ear at the promontory and the vestibuli, then to the posterior wall of the middle ear cavity, then your stylomastoid foramen, then your extracranial course. That is, it enters the posteromedial aspect of the parotid gland and terminates into its terminal branches. Now, you should know that something called bend. Okay, so if you take along this course, the facial nerve is going to have two bends. Okay, it is going to have two bend. Okay, so this process will come back again. So if you take, this is one bend. Okay, this is going to be one bend. This is called as geniculate ganglion. So what is going to happen? After it enters the internal acoustic meatus, the nerve is going to turn or do a posterior bending to enter into middle ear cavity. Okay, it is going to do a posterior bending to enter into the middle ear cavity. So that bend is marked by your geniculate ganglion. That bend is marked by your geniculate ganglion. Okay, and it is going to have one more bend in your middle ear cavity, that is called genu. If you are not going to mention about genu, it is fine, because in the picture also it is not given that clearly, but this bend is very important. Okay, so the first bend is going to be at the geniculate ganglion. Okay, so this is what you must know. So we will just see the course. So it is going to arise from the pons, that is your pons, that is your, that's two roots, your medial motor root and the lateral sensory root, then pontomedullary junction, then it is going to come to cerebellopontine angle, then your internal acoustic meatus, that is going to be fusion of two roots, and facial canal genu. This is what I told. Okay, so you are going to have the bending that is responsible for the formation of geniculate ganglion, then your stylomastoid foramen, and finally posteromedial aspect of your parotid gland, and henceforth. Okay, so this picture you can just study the branches. So greater petrosal nerve, lesser petrosal nerve, nerve to stapedius, cauda tympani nerve, all these are branches. You can refer your textbook. So I hope you are clear with the course now. So just remember these pictures. Okay, so first I put a brain, then a cranial cavity, then again one more cranial cavity, then middle ear. Okay, so these are the four landmarks. So these are the landmarks that you must remember. Okay, now moving on to your clinical aspect, that is very important. Lesions. So what is a lesion? So in neurophysiology, we'll be studying in detail. Just remember, lesion is a damage to a nerve fiber due to damage to a particular organ or something. Okay, so there is going to be injury to a nerve due to damage to a particular organ or a tissue, that is called as a lesion. So if a nerve is going to be injured or it is going to attain lesion, then its function is not going to be proper. Let's say, for example, we saw general somatic afferent fiber, which is going to carry your general sensations. Say, suppose that nerve fiber is damaged. So from that concerned tissue, that tissue is not going to perceive any temperature, pain or something, right? So that is lesion. So a lesion will generally tend to alter or hinder the carrying of a particular sensation. Now for your facial nerve, it is very, very important, but it is very simple. This is a diagram that I took from one of the tutorials. It is very simply and beautifully explained. So if you remember, your special visceral efferent fibers of your facial nerve that supplies your facial muscles, we saw it arises from a motor nucleus of the facial nerve, right? That is present in the pons. So always remember, patient will be presenting with a facial nerve lesion by some alteration in his face. That is what we are going to see. So what you must understand, the first thing is the motor. So this is your pons, okay? So the motor nucleus of the facial nerve itself is divided into two parts. That is your upper part and then your lower part. Okay, so this is your motor nucleus. Please listen carefully, very important for your clinicals. Okay, so this is your motor nucleus of the facial nerve. Okay, this motor nucleus of the facial nerve itself has two parts, an upper part and then a lower part. And we saw it is going to supply, so motor nucleus, so there is going to be supplying of your what muscles? Your facial muscles, right? So how it is going to supply is, the functionally itself it has been divided. Okay, so there are going to be some nerve fibers that is going to supply the upper part of the face. So this is the demarcation of your face into your upper part and the lower part. So some nerve fibers supply your upper part of the face, some nerve fibers supply the lower part of the face. Now suppose a patient comes with a facial nerve lesion. How will you clinically diagnose? So you cannot go and do a CT or an MR if you're in a village setup. You will not be able to do all these, right? So how will you diagnose where the lesion is present for the patient clinically? Now, just remember, this is your nucleus. So the nerve fibers above the nucleus is called as an upper motor neuron. And the set of nerve fibers below your nucleus is called as a lower motor neuron. So in neurophysiology, we'll be studying in detail. For your understanding, nerve fibers above your motor nucleus is called as an upper motor neuron. Nerve fibers below your nucleus is called as a lower motor neuron. So we should be diagnosing whether the patient is having a UMN, that is your upper motor neuron lesion, or a lower motor neuron lesion. That is, if the lesion is above the nucleus, either here or here or here, or he is going to have a lesion below the nucleus. If you are going to diagnose this, it is more than enough for the doctor to treat the patient. So how will you diagnose this? Please understand, I told you your nucleus is going to have two parts, your upper part and the lower part. Your upper part of the nucleus is going to receive the efferent fibers from both the regions, that is from both the right part and the left part of the cerebellum is going to receive. Okay, and the upper part of this nucleus supplies the upper part of the face. Okay, now similarly, lower part of the face is supplied by your lower part of your nucleus. So if you take the lower part of the nucleus is from only one side. Okay, so here it is from only the left side. Okay, so left side nerve fiber is arising, coming to your lower part of your motor nucleus, and it supplies the lower part of the face. So if say suppose the patient is having an upper motor neuron lesion, which means ear. So what is going to happen? Please understand, if an upper motor neuron lesion is present on the opposite side of the patient. So this is your left side and this is your right side. Okay, so here we are seeing the nerve fibers from the left side is responsible for supplying the right part of the face. This is called as contralateral. Contralateral means opposite side. Ipsilateral means same side now. Okay. So if you take, if suppose patient has upper motor neuron lesion in the left part of the cerebellum, the upper part of the face is normal, but the lower part of the face is affected. Again, I'll repeat. In case of an upper motor neuron lesion, in the contralateral side, the upper part of the face is normal, but the lower part of the face is affected. Why? Because we saw the upper part of the face is supplied by the nerve fibers on both the sides. So if this fiber is going to be damaged, this fiber is supplying all the necessary things that is required for the muscle to be activated. So the upper part of the face is as both ipsilateral connection as well as a contralateral connection. So in upper motor neuron lesion, the upper part of the face is spared, but the lower part of the face is affected. But in the lower motor neuron lesion, say suppose lesion is here, both the upper part and the lower part is damaged. This is what you must understand from this picture. So we have seen many new terms. We have seen what is a contralateral. We have seen what is an ipsilateral. Contralateral means from the opposite side. Ipsilateral means from the same side. Okay. Then we have seen what is an upper motor neuron lesion. We have seen what is a lower motor neuron lesion. Upper motor neuron lesion means above the nucleus, if a set of nerve fibers is damaged, it is called an upper motor neuron lesion. Below the nucleus, it is called lower motor neuron lesion. Here what you must understand, if a facial nerve fiber is damaged or it has an upper motor neuron lesion, on the contralateral side, the upper part of the face is spared because the upper part receives fibers even from the ipsilateral or the same side. But if there is a lower motor neuron lesion, both the upper part and the lower part is going to be affected on the contralateral side. So if there is lesion on the left part of the cerebellum, a lower motor neuron lesion, then your right side completely is going to be spared. That is the concept. I hope you are clear. If you have any doubts, you post in comment section. I will teach you this again. Okay. Now the next one. So this is what is given in your Vishram Singh picture. Okay. So this I have taken from Google. I have edited and I have taken from Google. So if you take, this is your nucleus. Okay. So if there is upper motor neuron lesion, your upper part. So here if you see this picture, upper part is going to be spared, but the lower part is going to be affected. If it is a lower motor neuron lesion, contralateral, complete half of the face is going to be paralyzed if it is a lower motor neuron lesion. Next, we have a very good interesting syndrome called crocodile tear syndrome. Okay, for which we'll go to this picture. So if you take, we saw the general visceral efference. General visceral efference. We saw it supplies your glands. Right, so here if you take, it supplies your submandibular, sublingual and lacrimentary glands. So we saw it arises from the LN and the SSN nucleus, if you remember. So what happens is in crocodile tear syndrome, say suppose there is going to be some damage to the parasympathetic fibers. Okay, so if there is some damage to the parasympathetic fibers supplying your submandibular gland and sublingual gland. Okay, so you are met with some accident or there is some infection. Because of that, the parasympathetic fibers have been damaged. Always remember, these fibers has the potency to regenerate. So when the parasympathetic fibers begin to regenerate, some of the parasympathetic fibers via your greater petrosal nerve can reach your lacrimal gland. Say suppose there is overgrowth of your parasympathetic fibers, automatically it is going to enter into your lacrimal gland. So what is going to happen? All these are combined. So you all know during eating, your salivary glands are going to be stimulated. That helps in your salivation. So what will happen is in crocodile tear syndrome, when a patient is eating food, he will be lacrimating continuously because the parasympathetic fibers supplying the salivary gland has also now intervened the lacrimal gland. Hence there is tears also. So what is going to happen during eating? The parasympathetic fibers supplying your salivary glands is stimulated. At the same time, what is going to happen now? Your fibers supplying lacrimal gland is also stimulated. So hence there is going to be tears continuously while eating. So how will you write this is, following a damage to the parasympathetic fibers supplying your sublingual or your simply put it as salivary gland, during regeneration, these parasympathetic fibers supplying the salivary gland can innervate lacrimal gland also. Therefore, while eating, these parasympathetic fibers are activated. Hence, the patient lacrimates. Okay, this is called as crocodile tears syndrome. So with this, we are completing facial now. So just go read now itself. You should remember these landmarks that I have put here. Okay, and then remember these pictures and try to design your own flow chart as simple as possible. This is more than enough. And try to learn the branches. Lesions is very important. If you want me to repeat again, I'll be repeating in the comment section for you in more simpler way. You just have to understand nucleus has two parts, contralateral, ipsilateral for the upper part. If you're going to write this, it is more than enough. Okay. Thank you.